So the biggest thing is I always tell people when it comes to inheritance, give it some time for the dust to settle because oftentimes again you can have miscellaneous stuff. I've had clients where they're like, oh, I found this account my dad had, or oh, we've got real estate but we haven't put it on the market yet, or it might be again if it's collectibles or something like that needing to sell. So the biggest thing I tell people when it comes to managing is take some time, deliberate due process, and this is where a financial advisor like myself can help people, especially when they don't know what to do. Claiming as a beneficiary on an IRA or 401k can be an arduous process. Oftentimes, people get a packet of 15 pages and all these options, and they're like, what in the world do I do? So the big thing is, from that, how do I approach it? I always tell people, let me be a resource. Before you sign anything, let me review it. Let me work with you and that custodian to make sure you're doing the right thing based on your intentions and desires. And, that's the big thing too, is what do we do with this money? And having a deep conversation on that, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, at some point.
Right, and imagine, so yeah, give it time. You also want to give yourself time to grieve, right? Be sad. Your loved one is gone. I mean, it's sad when they're in their 90s. It's sad when they die in their 50s. But either way, give yourself time to grieve. That'd be a good way to avoid making bad decisions, rash decisions, anything else to help someone kind of just, don't go and buy a boat, right? So other than time, how else can someone avoid wasting the money or making bad decisions with that large sum of money?
The biggest thing is what I've seen is I ask people, okay, you have $100,000, you have $1 million, whatever you inherit. What are the things you want to do in life now that you couldn't do beforehand? Or maybe you were waiting to do. So it could be paying off debt. I've had a lot of clients say, look, I didn't expect this money. Let me go ahead and pay off my mortgage. I've also seen people invest it because they're like, wow, I just expedited my retirement readiness. And then I've seen people, again, do some combination of that in addition to spending the money on something they want, be it a trip or, maybe take care of the kids, college funding. So I think that's the biggest thing is, again, let the dust settle, figure out what you can do in life now that you have this money that you couldn't do beforehand, and then make a decision of, okay, this is what I want to do. But I'm very anti just put all your money into one thing. Take it all and pay off debt. Take it all and invest it for the future. Take it all and spend it on trips or buy boats. So I genuinely want people to say, okay, this is a blessing. You have this inheritance now. Like, how will this make life better? In the short term and the long term. But yeah, I've had people again who they get money and it's like winning a lottery ticket. They're like, oh, cool. I'm going to go to Cozumel, Mexico for 3 weeks and do all inclusive, invite 7 of my friends and pay for them. And it's like, well, hold on a minute. Like, we could probably do that, but are you sure you really want to do that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is diversification, right? I mean, when someone's alive, one of the best strategies for your portfolio is diversification. So kind of taking a step and looking, okay, what have I been doing? What's worked? What do I want to be improved? What are my goals? Now is a good time to reevaluate and then kind of go from there. So yeah, sticking to the plan and don't make any decision too quickly and leave yourself time to mourn. Those are 3 big things to make sure you are doing the right thing and then kind of integrating it into your existing plan. I mean, give me an example of how, a client had something going very well, it following the plan, all of a sudden this big sum of money comes up and you kind of got to rework it and be open to changing your existing plan. So what's the best way to integrate all this money into your current plan, assuming you're already working with an advisor?
So one of my clients, for example, to use in the situation, inherited a bunch of stuff, right? So it was IRA money, cash from bank accounts, and in real estate. So it was a various amount of everything. A couple things we looked at for them was they were already in a good financial spot. They didn't have a ton of debt. They paid off their student loans. They were both, white collar, making good money. And in addition to that, they were investing a ton of money. They were maxing their 401ks. They were doing backdoor Roth IRAs. So they're building assets. So for them, we looked at everything and the conversation came around what's important to keep, like what is sentimental and what means a lot. The cash meant a lot because they saw that as a means of, hey, we could continue to build a legacy even for our children. They have 2 kids. under 10 years old. And they're like, we want to keep that money accessible, but we don't want to leave it in cash, so we want to invest it. But ultimately, we set it up where it is a trust, so that money, if it's not spent for the husband and wife, will be for the kids in the future. The IRA, of course, with the new rules because of the Secure Act, has to be liquidated within 10 years. So we built that in to be, again, money to help supplement things like private school stuff for the kids. So it's going to be spent anyway in 10 years, and it doesn't hurt them to spend it. And then the real estate, they've kept some of it. Some of it was sentimental. For example, there was a family farm with the house. So they did want to keep that. But now that a couple years have passed, you can tell they're getting a little jaded. They're like, we don't have the time to go down there. We're putting a lot of money into it. We got to pay utility bills. And then, of course, they have some rental properties where they're dealing with tenants, and they've got that issue. Like, ugh, we're dealing with these tenants. So those will probably be sold at some point. But we had this conversation a couple months ago of, okay, you're going to sell it. Like, what's this money going to do for you? So we bounced around the ideas of it being, okay, we want to buy a second home. It's a beach house. We want that for the kids while they're young. Or it could be just say, let's sell it and put in something that generates income for us so we can get out of our high stress jobs eventually or sooner than we want to as well. So we just had this conversation a couple months ago. They haven't made any decisions yet. But it's an ongoing dynamic that it's definitely going to make their life better because they have this inheritance. But we built everything they've inherited based around, again, what's important, what are the legacy pieces you want to leave behind as you leave stuff? And then secondly, how can this make your life better? And then we look at the nuances of, income taxes, all those things as well. We're not forgetting those. So we know there's some benefits to inheriting assets, predominantly from a tax standpoint, because of this thing called a step up in basis, which we'll probably cover too.